Going to change an intake manifold out on a 98 Lincoln Town Car, 4.6 liter. These engines are real renowned for leaking. Right here is where the heater hose goes to the intake, and it leaks right there at the nipple. The nipple can't be replaced. It's molded into a plastic intake manifold. I found signs of leaking right here and right around the you can see antifreeze right there. Leaks around where the plastic seams together. There's no point in getting a used one, because if you go to a junkyard and get a used one, you're more likely getting one that's going to do this if it's not already doing it. Dorman makes a kit. They're not too bad, around $225 depending on who you get it from. Comes with a whole new intake manifold. Comes with a thermostat and some nuts and bolts, and for some brackets for the alternator. I'm not really sure why. I've done one of these before and didn't have to change the brackets, but it could be that this kit just requires them to go with this particular manifold. But it's a nice little kit. There's really no many gaskets because of everything's O-ring fit, except for maybe the thermostat housing. I'm gonna have to look into that. But I'm fixing to drain the antifreeze down. You definitely never want to pull the intake manifold without draining the antifreeze, because pop it apart, you'll end up having lots of antifreeze down inside the engine block, and you're really messed up. So always drain the antifreeze before you pull an intake manifold.
That's the radiator drain petcock. Turn the valve and the antifreeze will come out that little spigot right there.
I just took a pair of pliers and turned it. I mean, this should almost be finger tight anyways. You can snuggle up a pair of pliers. If it takes more than that, it's probably jammed. But I pulled that, got it draining. And I went and took the radiator cap off. That way it doesn't have a vacuum on the system. That way it just drain freely. So drain the system down like I said. Maybe about a half a gallon to a gallon. And then we'll start pulling the intake. We'll probably start by pulling the breather box and the upper radiator hose, and then the fuel lines of the fuel rail. To make this an easy removal, I just disconnected the wires from this map sensor here and one off the breather box. Just unclipped it with regular clips like you're going to change the air filter. There is one bolt right here. It just usually unscrews out of the manifold. I disconnected it from the throttle body. I pulled this tube back out of this hole, and I just pulled this tube off the valve cover. And I took it off as an assembly. That makes it a whole lot easier than trying to remove everything piece by piece.
Very likely.
Now I'm going to pull the alternator. I just undid this bracket here. It's just 4 bolts, 5/16 or 8mm to one. Pull that bracket off. You loosen these 2 bolts here. You don't have to pull them all the way out. The alternator's notched. It just slides right off. And you disconnect this wire connector. It's just a squeeze. You just squeeze it and release it off the back of the alternator. There's no need in pulling all the wires loose. Just fold it back, and just lay it back and peel things back. That way you don't have to sit there and disconnect a bunch of wires and try to figure out where they go to later. Okay, now I'm going through here and disconnecting the coil packs. You just squeeze the bottom right there and they pull off pretty easy. Then I'm disconnecting the fuel injectors, squeezing that, pulling them, peeling them back. I have disconnected the EGR valve, just unplugged it off that. Some more emissions right here. It's hard to see, but it's a vacuum line just pulls off, and it had one that ran to the throttle body assembly. Just pulled that, and then one ran to the fuel pressure regulator right here. And I'm just peeling them back, letting them catch just to kind of get out of my way. I pulled this one vacuum line off this. It's right here. I just pulled this off from the PCV valve. Now I've undone the throttle bracket, and what I'm going to do here, throttle cable, just in case people want to curious. See how that thing catches? you disconnect that bracket, you turn the throttle cable up like so, where you can see it, and just slide it off. Then the cruise control cable, and the bracket's loose, you got enough slack in it here, just slide it forward, and it slides right out. Then your throttle cable, of course you got to disconnect the spring. Now your throttle cable stuff is ready just to set off. Also pull to the side. Okay, I'm taking the fuel lines off. Here you'll see these little clips. It's just a safety clip to help keep the fuel line from popping loose, just in case. I took a screwdriver and just kind of pried it off. It's usually got a little catch wire to keep them from going anywhere. Okay, I've got one fuel line loose. Want to make sure I have the right tool for removing it. I have a whole set. Guessed it right on the first one. Just these little plastic releases. You can buy them in any Advanced, AutoZone, O'Reilly's, CarQuest. They all sell these little plastic tools. Unless it's got a split in it. This side took a red one, a little bit smaller one. This one takes a little bit bigger one. You kind of push the line forward, squeeze that in, and it releases it. It's a pretty little slick tool. Easy to work, no fuss, no mess. Okay, one thing I didn't realize, maybe I did a different model before, but you actually have to remove the wiper blade unit, which is like the whole vent tray for this. So I will show you in reverse order. I went ahead and took it off. But you have to do it because of this bracket right here. It actually is supposed to bolt in the back, but somebody left the bolt out. Not that it really helps, because with that wiper unit on top of it, you can't get it out. But it makes it a whole lot easier to pull this thing straight off and get the back two bolts and the spark plugs and everything else. So, like I said, I will show in the reverse order how this comes apart, goes together type thing. Okay, it lifted right out. I got all the bolts out, which I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 10 bolts to hold the manifold down to the heads. Now is clean up, but also I want to be changing the spark plugs, which right there. That's the spark plug hole. If there's any better time to change the plugs, it'd be now, because they're pretty hard to get to with the manifold on. Not that it's impossible, but it's much easier this way. So we'll pull the plugs, clean the heads, and then set the new manifold back down on there with the injector system. What we're going to do is, here's the manifold off. I'm going to take the injector rails off with the injectors coming off with it. I got a new O-ring set to go with it. Apparently the kit for the manifold didn't come with those, so I've already got those. And just lift it off together and set it over onto, put the new O-rings on it, set it over on the new manifold, and then have it ready to go back together. And there's some block off plugs like here and here that need to go swapped over to the other manifold. Okay, there's the new spark plugs ready to go in. As I've done, I think I've mentioned in other videos, always put anti-seize on the threads, because it goes down in those holes, and you definitely don't want those steel plugs seizing up the aluminum heads. And then before you get started, you want to blow all the spark plug holes out of all the debris, so that, you know, any kind of debris will fall down inside the cylinder there. Okay, I pulled the fuel rail off. It just had these 4 bolts right here that went in these holes. Of course, I'll show you when I go back together with it, but pull the fuel rail off. It just kind of popped out of the... I kept it together. It's got some crossover lines, and there's no need in breaking them or replacing them. They're still in good shape and pretty much a dealer item. But they're in good shape. No signs of leakage or anything like that. So I pulled it off as an assembly, and now I've got them sticking up where I can get to the O-rings. I'm going to put new O-rings on those. And then I'll stick it back in. You'll see, of course, see where the bolts go. But this right now, the fuel rail's upside down. They go in these holes here. Okay. I put new O-rings on the injectors. and I've greased them. But you don't have to do this, but I use this transaxle assembly lube. And the reason why I put them on the O-rings and then on the holes where the injectors go, I put a coating in there. And the reason why I did that is because when I put the transmissions together, this makes the seals just slide right through without any resistance and puts things together, and it makes it real easy to put fuel injectors in. But if you don't have any, you can use Vaseline, KY jelly, or WD-40, even motor oil for that matter. But I'd recommend something, you know, like KY jelly or Vaseline if you can't get this stuff. You just want the seals to push in and slide in smoothly. You don't want to have to push them real hard. Yeah, okay. Okay, the intake is ready to go back on. I cleaned it. There's many ways you can clean the heads there. They have to be cleaned because the gaskets are made into the new intake. They're like O-ring type gaskets, already pressed in like a groove. I'll show you in just a second. Well, actually, you can just look at it right here. That's your gaskets right there. And the bolts to the intake are 18 to 19 foot-pounds of torque, and there's a bolt pattern. And I'm going to probably put some of this stuff, this information and specs out on my website, so or either in the description here in the YouTube video, or I'll put it on my website, or both, put a link or something. But anyways, to clean that up, you can use a Scotch-Brite pad with a carburetor cleaner, some type of a brake clean solvent, possibly a razor blade scraper, or I used a little die grinder with a 2-inch, basically like a Velcro Scotch-Brite pad. It's just an abrasive wheel. It doesn't, I mean, you could get it to cut metal if you sit there and held it, but it's really good for quick cleaning. So the deck's really good and clean, ready to go, and fixing to stick the manifold on. Okay, the intake is bolted down, and I hooked up one fuel injector and one coil pack there right underneath the fuel lines. I went ahead and plugged the fuel lines up, put the little safety clips back on, and I've turned the ignition, plugged up the battery and plugged up the ignition just to make sure I don't have leaks at the oil line or the fuel lines or at any of the injectors. And so far I've gone around and there isn't any. So now I can proceed to go ahead and put the rest of it together. Because at this point, if it's going to leak, I'd like to stop now and pull the rails and find the leaky one. But I've replaced all the injector O-rings, and I didn't replace the fuel line O-rings, but they looked really good. Plugged them up, and they seem to be going. So, okay, before I stick the coil packs in, just wanted to say to use some dielectric grease and put it up inside there, because that'll help the boot from sticking to the spark plug if you ever got to pull it out. Change the plugs. Of course, I think these plugs are 60 or 100,000 miles, but I do that, and I usually spray a little silicone lubricant on the outside to make it go in. So, okay, still we're going to put it together, and the order I've gone in now is I've put all the coil packs in, put the bolts in them and hold them down, and I've connected them and connected all the fuel injectors. And then, see if I can get there to it to see it. I've now hooked up the rear heater hose to the nipple, and it's connected now. And I think now we're ready to put the throttle body on and connect the EGR valve back up to the throttle body. You want to make sure the surface of your throttle body is clean, which this one is real clean. So, okay, it's put back together. Pretty much put it together in the reverse order. I think I gave you the most important tips. You know, just pay attention to where your hoses and stuff unplug from, and then plug them back. The one nice thing about this car, all the hoses and wires pretty much laid into place where they needed to go, so it wasn't hard to figure out where they went. Even if I'd waited days, I think, you know, or even weeks, I think I could have figured it out. Right now I'm letting the oil drain, because since the manifold was leaking everywhere, I don't know how much, you know, if it sucked any in or whatever, so it's just always good to start fresh and with a nice good oil change. And then I'll put the antifreeze in, and we'll start it up and see how it does. While I'm waiting for the oil to drain, I'm going to go ahead and put the wiper blade unit back in place. It's a pretty cool design. I mean, you just lift out the whole vent cowl area with the wiper arms and everything attached into it. That's pretty smart actually, because it makes it easy to repair or fix anything. And it'll go right there up against the windshield. Sits in there. One bolt right there. One bolt there. And one, let's go over here. There's a few little bolts for the main unit. And there's another piece of tray that sits in here, but I think somebody's already been in this and removed the nuts. If there's a nut here, supports this bracket. This is another mounting bolt right here for that tray, and it's pretty much solid in. And the tray itself has the wire run out of it to a connector right here to plug your wiper unit up, and voila. Now the moment of truth. Got a little belt squeak. But runs really smooth.